We are days away, and depending on when you're listening or watching this, we are less days away from the start of Penn State training camp. So your questions, what's on your mind? You're the show director today on the BWI Mailbag Show. Myself and Nate Bauer, senior editor, are going to get into what you want to know heading into the final days of summer. Now, I know August is still summer, but as soon as training camp hits, it's the fall, baby. BWI Daily Edition Mailbag. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. Nate Bauer, senior editor, as I mentioned in the introduction, is going to be joining us. He is here now. He is front and center, and I'll put you even more front and center. Say hello to everybody, Nate.
Whoa. Let's not get carried away here, T. Frank.
How you feeling today? How's everything going on this lovely Thursday before we get into the mailbag questions?
You know, there's some kid stuff, ear infections, but other than that, great. When you said days away and then looking at the calendar and realizing it actually is single digit days away, you know, there's like this dichotomy of dread,
excitement,
right? Like, oh
fear.
Yeah, all of it combined. Like, oh my goodness, summer vacation is over. Like,
right,
it's back to the grind. But also, it'll be nice to get back around football. Like, it's you know, you and I just went this week to a practice availability for men's basketball, and you know, I don't know how you felt about it, but it's cool. It's cool to be back in, you know, there is still, after all of these years, a novelty to being around incredible athletes, right? Like, it's just amazing the things that these guys do. And when you're up close and personal and can see it, you know, with kind of that courtside vantage point or, you know, sideline vantage point in the case of football, it still creates a little bit of a buzz and generates some excitement. So looking forward to it.
And whenever there's people gathered and there's excitement about something you're doing and people are coming together for a common cause, even if you aren't a part of it, you feel the excitement. And fall, there's always just a certain level of excitement. And for us, for you and I, the level of dread comes with, so you know how you work 40 hours a week? That's now over. Like, you are now working until Christmas. But no one really cares about that, Nate. They want to get
is it really work? Is it really work when it's
well, when I'm watching film till 1:30 in the morning, it does feel a little bit like work. So not to be that guy and be all gripey about my great job, but a little bit. There's some football. Dark sides. That's true. Let's get in the mailbag before I say anything else controversial. Best way to get your questions on the BWI mailbag is to subscribe to Blue White Illustrated. You sign up bluewhiteillustrated.com for $1, get 12 months of access. Lions Den message forum members, I don't want to say they take first priority, but we always answer the questions from there unless there's something we cannot answer or there is no answer. You know, sometimes we'll reply directly on the board, but you get your questions answered if you follow on Twitter at Thomas Frank Carr. You can see it here on the screen here on YouTube. That goes up Wednesday night. I was watching a DIY show, so it went up at 10 o'clock last night because I forgot. But it always goes up Wednesday night. You can always answer Thursday morning, and you'll always have it on the BWI Daily Edition Mailbag Show. So let's get to our first question, which after all of that, Nate, actually comes from YouTube. Because yesterday you and I were previewing the season preview part 1 quarterbacks at MSCAT. He donated to the channel because he wanted to have a question answered. So I wanted to make sure we got to his question today. He says, do you think we'll see Mike Yurcich attack the middle of the field this season? Interesting question to start us off. Interesting way we can take this, you know, a number of different ways. So, Nate, what's your first thought when you see that question?
I think my first thought is it's threefold, right? One is that's where Parker Washington lives, right?
Yep.
Two, that's where the tight ends live. And three, that's where Sean Clifford doesn't seem to like to throw the ball.
Yeah. Yep.
So something's got to give. I mean, I'm stealing from you. I don't want to take your thunder, but I mean, you have laid out, I think, pretty clearly that that's just not an area of the field that Sean Clifford has shown much comfort with. Certainly last year, and then I would guess dating back to 2020. So
yeah,
if that's the case, right, it's just how comfortable is Sean Clifford? How adept is he at taking advantage of some of the matchups that he's going to have? Because to be honest with you, you would think, and I would think, that those tight ends are going to be a mismatch, and that the bulk of the mismatch that those tight ends are going to generate, whether it's on a linebacker or even the safeties, right? I mean, you're talking extreme height differences with the safeties that they're going to face. Is Sean Clifford going to be comfortable enough to take those riskier throws, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's different coverages and different ways you can attack the middle of the field, right? So if we're just going to be very basic about it, cover 3, you're going down the seams. Cover 2, you're going down the middle, right? And then cover 4, you have to find a way to fit it in between the two levels of the defense. So it's one of those situations, or you need to have a great route concept that pulls somebody out of a zone. So there's a bunch of different ways you can attack the middle of the field, but it's not necessarily even the middle, because they did last year. They flooded the underneath zones. Parker Washington was great at catching a ball for 7 yards, getting 8 and then a first down, but not much more. So that part is fine. It's about getting the catch and run opportunities for those tight ends over the middle, where they can do serious damage, where they can catch the ball one-on-one with a linebacker, break that tackle in the open field against the safety, maybe outrun him, maybe run him over. Those are the situations I think Penn State needs more of. That yards after catch doesn't just come from, Jahan Dotson deep down the field. It comes from the opportunity to get the ball 15 yards down the field and then have him run for 24. Let the receiver do some work. And that has been a problem for Sean Clifford, I think, when it comes to anticipation. You see a lot of these throws when you are anticipating where the zone opens and closes, and the confidence to put the ball there and trust your receiver to catch it. There's a lot of those plays that can be made, and he did make some of them last year. So it's not a blanket statement. He didn't make any of them. Yeah.
I would think also, and you can explain this much better than I, but when you're vacating, right, that first level, second level, and the kind of those dump off passes to your running backs, you would think that finding Nick Singleton in a one-on-one with a linebacker is exactly what you want, right, in the passing game. But that's it feels to me that that's different from what the question is asking, right? Like the question is asking, hey, are they going to take designed passes between the hashes? And I mean, my guess would be yes.
So there were ones in the bowl game, I pointed out in the film study of, I thought Brenton Strange was open a couple of times, and Sean Clifford, for whatever reason, didn't target him. And, you can make the argument the safety could close on that, but not every safety closes on every play. So there were opportunities. And I talked to Seth Galina of PFF earlier this offseason, and we had the same conversation. I said, targets over the middle of the field seemed hard to come by. And he said, well, if they're calling those plays, so if you don't want him targeting that area of the field because you don't want him throwing interceptions, and that's the real reason you don't throw over the middle, there are more bodies, right? So if you're calling those plays, you kind of want him to throw the primary read. And if the primary read is a deep crosser to the tight end or to Parker Washington, and he passes that up for something else, then it's not entirely on the quarterback. So I don't think there will be as many limitations to the offense this year. We talked about that yesterday on the show, but it is all up to the quarterback. He's the trigger man. He's going to decide where the ball goes. Let's move on to our next question. Nittany Lion Nation asks, offensive and defensive player that will surprise this season. That is a statement question.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Okay. I'm gonna go Tyler Elsdon.
Okay.
I think that qualifies, right? In terms of
Yes.
people just don't know much about him, and he'll play, and I think he'll do pretty well. But Chop Robinson might be there too, just because as that nature of transferdom, right? Like whether or
Yep.
not the broader
Yep.
fan base really has any idea of who he is and what he does. Certainly, I think he would qualify too. But I'll stick with the first one because they're asking for one.
Yeah.
Tyler Elsdon on defense and offensively. I mean, Nick Singleton doesn't count, does he? Does he count?
So I was this will lead into my answer because I was looking at something yesterday. We have 365 days of shows here on the BWI Daily. That's on our podcast, so that means every show that we've put on audio form. So there are no surprise players. We have uncovered every stone for Penn State football. I think every single player has gotten their name mentioned here on the show in the off season. It's like at this point it'd be like, where's Waldo of the guys that we haven't talked about. So this one's tough.
I mean, it's almost like it has to be like Jaden Dotton, like
right.
Like there's a guy that nobody talks about, but
Mason Stahl. There's my answer. Mason Stahl.
Okay.
He's going to catch about 9 passes, and 2 of them will be important, and I something like that.
Yeah.
Again, one against Michigan for a critical first down.
I think that what I try to do is recognize that the overwhelming majority of Penn State fans who are absolutely fans don't follow it to the level that obviously we do, but also that subscribers of ours do, right? So like everybody knows about Nick Singleton unless you are kind of a normal Penn State fan, right? Like, I mean,
I have a gym friend, and Dave at the gym, he talked to me the other day, and he's like, dude, I checked out of football all summer. Like, I didn't pay attention at all. I was like, yeah, there's a lot of people do that. I get that. So I completely hear what you're saying. There are certain fans that maybe now that we're getting, and I think it'll be like the first 5 days of training camp, right? Once we start seeing stuff and the buzz starts happening, it's never immediate. It's never right off the bat unless you have like a team that maybe has national championship hopes. But somewhere around the 8th day of training camp, we're going to get into the full swing of everyone's back on board. So with that in mind, I'm going to go on the defensive side with the guy I keep talking about this year. There's 2, but I will pick Zakee Wheatley. 6'2", great wingspan, great athleticism. I, like a bunch of other, I think I have this in common with fans, that when I see a very talented player, an obviously talented player, I start the clock too early. That being said, the spring was very encouraging for Zakee Wheatley. He was the turnover king. He had got his hands on the ball in the spring game. I got to see it. I got to see his downhill trigger on slant routes. That's going to be really valuable. I just think that he's got the length and the athleticism and the football intelligence backing all of that up to make plays. So that's my defensive guy. And then on offense, is Olufashanu an answer here? Can he be an answer?
No.
As the starting left tackle? No? Okay. Because I think he's got superstar potentials from what I've seen. Again, it may be too early, but we're talking about who's going to be a surprise guy. And a surprise guy is not Kevon Lee. So I still hold out hope that Keziah Holmes, who is talented, has a role somewhere on the team. But we'll see.
Yeah.
That's to be determined by the depth at that position.
I might even argue Kaytron Allen as, I mean, certainly we don't talk about him enough. And it's just when it's a 2-man class that comes in at that position, and one has just deservedly so the amount of hype that Nick does, then I think it leaves a little bit of, or it casts a little bit of a shadow to a guy in Kaytron Allen who honestly had as much buzz as anybody in the spring, right? He was a guy who I think that a lot of people were very, very impressed with how he came in. And
Yep.
To be honest with you, it's the grasp of what they want to do offensively, right?
He has
Like
a
that,
high
just having
floor
that
to start.
background.
Yep.
Having that background is just such a benefit to him that, I mean, I think that he would definitely come across as a surprise or fit into that
Yeah.
category if he goes off and has a couple of nice games at the beginning of the season.
I don't know what his ceiling is. You make a really good point because I've always been focused on like how good he is out of the box, but I don't know what his ceiling is. I'm interested to see because he's lost about 10, 12 pounds since IMG, where he was a 220-pound tailback. Now he's about 211, so maybe about 8 pounds. But like, he looked good this spring. What does that look like? What is his upper end ability from a physical standpoint when he's in the training program? Because he's always come across as he's already like a sophomore in my mind as a running back. This, like a regular football game, we're spending all of our time on the first 2 drives, and there's going to be a 2-minute warning where we have to jam in like 4 or 5 drives. It's on me, the quarterback. I'm the offensive coordinator. We need to manage that better. So Nate, we're going to spend some more time on this one though, because we're going to lay on this one to give our thoughts about the open practice as well. So Zlati asks, next basketball commit. First off, that, and if you have anything to say about that. Secondarily, I want to ask you, what were your impressions of the open practice for summer basketball that Penn State held on Tuesday?
The next basketball commit is a challenge, honestly. I don't know. Like, I have certainly it is 5, okay, in the class of 2023 that Penn State is just really all in on. I would put Kerry Booth at the top of that list. Reed Ducharme, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. Amani Hansberry. There you go. Deshaun Harris-Smith and Devin Royal, right? Those are the 5. Devin Royal is a top 25 player in the country. It's tough, right? Like, I mean, if Penn State manages to stay in it, he actually did just release, I believe on Monday, his final 9. Penn State's in it. I think that when there's a final 4 for him, Penn State will be in that, along with Marquette, Michigan State, and Ohio State. But the kid is from Columbus. It's going to be a difficult draw for Penn State to get him away from the Buckeyes. But if I had to pick, Kerry Booth, I would say Kerry Booth, kind of a legacy recruit for Penn State. The connections are strong there. They love the kid. They just, it is, Penn State has devoted many, many resources, hours, time, all of those things to try to bring him in this class. And I think that ultimately that will be successful for Penn State.
So what were your thoughts of the team proper when we got to see them for the first time, and all the new faces as well? What were your thoughts on the open practice?
Yeah, I thought they looked good. I mean, I told you this, and I said it on the message board, and I will just continue to repeat it over and over until I'm blue in the face. Jalen Pickett is a stud. He is a really good basketball player. He's smart. He leads. He just he's got an uncanny floor sense, I would call it, right? I mean, he just sees things that aren't necessarily easy to see. And I think that he has the confidence of Micah Shrewsbury, right? I think he has the confidence of his teammates. And so that is kind of it's not necessarily a sexy pick as the first thing that stands out, because there are 8 new pieces to the program. You've got 5 true freshmen, you've got 3 transfers. And so everybody wants to know about those guys, and that's warranted. I think that those guys, many of those 8 are going to end up playing a factor on the team this year. They're going to get good run. That said, when you can start with Jalen Pickett and Seth Lundy, you're in a really good place. So those 2 guys, Jalen at the front and then Seth slightly behind, I think stand out for how they carry themselves and how they play in that practice setting. But then beyond that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say the one thing I noticed, and I was busy gathering photos and other things like that. But what I noticed was it feels like Pickett knows when to take over, right? When to keep the ball and when to be a part of the team. Because there were moments we were watching a pretty competitive scrimmage, and he would just blow by a guy. But he hadn't been like, he didn't do that every play. He picked his moments to when I need to be the guy that gets a bucket here, and then when I need to be a part of the offense of facilitating and passing and, getting guys open with what I'm doing. So I thought that was a really interesting, subtle skill he might have. Of the young guys, who stood out to you of the freshmen?
So Keba, I'm going to mispronounce his last name. Big guy, 6'10", 235 is what he's listed at. I don't know that he's quite like, did you see 6'10"? 6'10" felt high to me.
So I thought one of the transfers wasn't very tall. It turned out he was 6'4". So they're all very tall. Yeah. I am not used to the basketball perspective of athlete. But I thought he was, anywhere from 6'8" to 6'10". Once you get over 6'8", it feels hard for me to know the difference.
He's tall. He's kind of skinny.
He's athletic.
But his skinny is bigger today than it was when he signed at Penn State. And that was a point that Micah Shrewsbury kind of hammered home he's put on like 20 pounds already. So if he continues to work and can get bigger, he certainly looks like a guy who's fluid and will be able to handle himself. It's just a matter of, when you're facing some of these 250-pound, 260, forwards in the Big Ten, how much do you get pushed around? How much strength do you have? Right. How much are you able to handle yourselves defensively? Right. So for Keba, that's kind of the big thing. Demetrius Lilly, on the other hand, who was another big man, both of these guys are going to have to play. They don't have other fives. So they're both going to have to play. Lilly, on the other hand, is big. He's just a big, kind of lumbering dude, right? And so
very different. Those guys could not have been more 100%. Different.
If you give Demetrius Lilly, who they call Meech, if Meech has a year or two, right, until they really need to rely on him, I think there's great potential there. He moves fairly well. He's a little clunky, but give him some time, and I think he can develop into a player for them. And then, honestly, the guards, I'll wrap it up here. You've got three kind of very different, Evan Mahaffey isn't a guard. He's more of a wing type. He's a little Josh Reeves in him, kind of slim right now. We'll see how that holds up in the Big Ten. Obviously, they're going to want to try to put some weight on him. But then you've got Jameel Brown, who was kind of the top ranked recruit of the class. And he can play. He can play. And then Kanye Clary is small. He's short. He looks short in person against other guys who are towering at 6'4" and above. But
he was tough. Put together. So the funny thing is, like, of the guys, he was the one that was most put together, which makes him look shorter because he's built and he's I would even say short. He's probably taller than I am, but again, the Forrest perspective made him look very small compared to the other guys. I don't normally have many opinions on basketball, but I know I told you this, and I'm not saying he's going to be the best player out of this group. And I didn't really get a long look at Jameel Brown, truthfully, but the best athlete I saw as far as pure athletic potential, the way he moved, his body composition, and also the way he was put together. Like you have guys that have legs that are maybe a little bit too long, or their arms aren't long enough, and like you don't have this great fulcrum and ratio of your levers to your core. But Keba Inji, number 3.
I'm looking it up right now. There's got to be a pronunciation.
I had a much more confident pronunciation in my head before I said it out loud, and then of course I false started on it. But anyway, he had the most athletic potential out of all of those guys. I thought he was very intriguing as a prospect. So, and I said the same thing about Lamar Stevens, and I'll retroactively call my shot here. When I saw him versus the other guys in that class with Tony Carr and everybody else. I said the guy who has NBA potential here, the best athlete, is Stevens because he can move at that size. I'm not saying that Keba is that, but he does have good athletic potential. I do have at least a sense for athleticism. Let's get through this question. TJ Parker has been the most impressive get, in his opinion, for James Franklin to date. This is from Poncho 570. Many teams in general normally do not have such success going into the heart of the SEC and pulling out a top 100 player, much less an elite pass rusher. Understand he's better scheme fit for Penn State than other schools. Understand that James and company have landed higher ranked players, but those players were within the usual recruiting footprint, and the staff had to closer relationships with their players. Name the most impressive get by James Franklin and his staff and give your reasons why. I think this is a really interesting question. And I'm going to push back on this, Poncho, and I'm going to say it is Parsons, because it's also about who you're going up against, who you're competing with to get those players. Parsons is the highest ranked recruit under James Franklin, I think. He was like, until denied Dennis Sutton. Something, right up there, elite top 5 player in the nation. And they got him in a competition with Ohio State where it looked like they were going to lose him, and then they didn't. So that and you get TJ Parker in part because you got Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons is the ultimate recruiting tool for everything he's doing in the NFL, for everything he did at Penn State, for what he has become, and their unorthodox, I would say, their creative path of using him, of seeing him as a pass rusher and saying, you're going to be a linebacker and you're going to be an all-world player that can do everything. So TJ Parker probably doesn't feel the same way about Penn State if they don't have this restoration effect of these pass rushers coming through Penn State.
I think that's fair. I think Drew Allar has to be in the conversation. It's obviously early in the process, and we're going to have to see how his career goes. But look, and this is acknowledging the downside is Penn State does not have an established history under James Franklin of developing top quarterbacks. And so
something's got to break the cycle, right?
Correct. And so I think that certainly Allar's rise, right, through recruiting and how he kind of went from more or less an unknown into the superstar that he became, that helped Penn State. If it had been a situation where Penn State was in on the front end, but so was everyone else, then maybe that changes the equation a little bit. Maybe that makes that a tougher draw for Penn State. But, hey, to Penn State's credit for identifying that talent, for being able to see what he was and what he could become. And then he became it. But look, to be able to weather the storm for a kid from Ohio, right? Like who had these major, he could have gone anywhere. That's pretty impressive, particularly at that position. It is, to me, it's really the unquestioned most important recruit that you can get, right, at the most important position. And he's the best player that they've done in terms of recruiting, closing on a recruit at that position in his time at Penn State.
Yeah, I think that's another, and you're right. They've got to start a run at that position like they have at others, at running back and at for a time receiver, and then of course at defensive end. The other thing about this about TJ Parker, Poncho, that I want to mention for those of you who subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, recruiting insider Ryan Snyder talked to TJ Parker about his decision to commit to Penn State. He is an Army kid, so his family is from all over. And he said, one of the things that made me laugh, he's like, I hate the heat, so I didn't want to stay in Alabama. So Penn State, as much as like it was, and I think you make a lot of great points there, TJ himself was a unique person to want to branch out and go away from home, even if that's not how he felt about home. So this is from PSU 09 on Twitter. And I love this question because he's talking about the quarterback for Purdue, O'Donnell. He can't run last year, more sack yards than any sort of rushing attempts. Not asking you to watch Purdue tape, but in general, is it better to blitz a non-running quarterback or drop more DBs into coverage? This is such a great question. I love this question because it comes down to what's the quarterback? How good is he? Because certain quarterbacks, there's no right answer. So let me give you an example. Let's go to the NFL to have some clear, everyone understands these sort of archetypes. There are certain coverages you cannot run against Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. You cannot run a traditional Tampa 2 because what you're doing is you're taking two safeties deep and you're taking your middle linebacker and you're filling in about 10 to 15 yards down the field. The minute an athletic quarterback sees that coverage, they know they can run. They know they have 15 yards. And when it's Lamar Jackson, he knows everything, like all bets are off how far he can get. Josh Allen, same thing. So you cannot run those coverages against those quarterbacks. But if you play cover 2 against Tom Brady, it doesn't matter because he knows how to beat every coverage blindfolded. So even a non-running quarterback, you have to be careful if they're a good quarterback about giving a guy too many of the same look. Because if you say, okay, we're going to play coverage against O'Donnell, and then they figure it out, and he's a good enough quarterback to then take advantage of the one or two coverages you're playing because of his athletic profile, then you do need to switch it up. So blitzing versus coverages, it just gives you more options when it's a non-running quarterback. And that would be, again, where I have to go and look at O'Donnell. Does he make quick decisions? Because if you blitz him and he's good at quick snap decisions, finding his hot route, then you put yourself at a disadvantage. So I guess when it comes down to a non-running quarterback, I'm more interested in now I have more tools in my coverage bag. So I would lean towards playing coverage and throwing everything at him. You're rolling from a cover 4 into a cover 3. You got a cover 2, but you're, playing a split field look. So there's a bunch of different things you can do when you don't have to dedicate somebody to spy the quarterback.
And the natural follow-up to that, you is when you looked at Manny Diaz and what he did previously at Miami, was that in the tool bag to throw the kitchen sink to have this variety of coverages?
Yes, but it's done in a pressure environment. So he's playing a split field look where he's got a cover 2 look on one side, but it's man on the other, and they're blitzing. So you're providing, he looks, so if his read is to the right and he's looking over here first and he sees one coverage and he goes, okay, on the backside, and he looks over here and for a split second, it's different. That split second is a sack because you've overloaded a gap or you've gotten a free rusher or something like that. And the hesitation of one side to the other gives you possibly the opportunity to get there. But if he's a good quarterback and he goes, oh, okay, it's just man, and then he knows where his dump off route is, and he doesn't freeze when he gets something different, a quarterback that's mature and done this a couple of times, they'll know, okay, so this is shot, either take the sack or dump the ball off or throw it away. So it all depends on the quarterback. It all depends on how good that guy is. Because the offensive coordinator can know it's coming, right? So you watch film. Even if I'm describing Manny Diaz's defense on the internet right now, you can go watch these things. Everyone can see it. It's how does the quarterback see it in the moment? Spencer Boken asks, and this he knows you very well, Nate. Over or under 30 points average for Penn State next year?
Oh boy.
You're not like having another kid, are you?
No.
That might have been the most pregnant pause.
Boo. All right. I'm gonna go over because it's not that hard to do. I need to look at some stats here. Bear with me just a moment, but
okay.
I think that there were maybe roughly half of college football last season averaged 30 or more points. Now, the Big Ten was not among them, right? Like there were a bunch of teams that were averaging 25 or fewer points last season.
Is that because the Big Ten is better or worse? Like, are the defenses good in the Big Ten? Or are there a bunch of self-limiting teams that like to run the ball and take possessions away rather than go for points?
I mean, it's probably both, right? Like, I mean, Ohio State more or less lapped everyone, and they finished first in the country. I knew that. I looked this up. Number 50 in the country last year in scoring was Texas Tech at 30.3 points per game. There were 52 teams that actually scored 30 or more points a game. Yeah, I think Penn State can do it. I think Penn State should do it.
Yeah. I was going to go under at 29.5 because I think 31, 31 might be the answer, right? And it depends on games where do you get to 50 in certain games? Because last year, one of the problems was even in games where Penn State was the superior team, they weren't blowing anybody out. They were not piling up points in certain contests to pad that number. NH Penn Stater won, I'm assuming New Hampshire, maybe. The 22 class ended up top 10. 23 class is a good chance to do the same. We're very close. This is likely to be the best 2-year stretch with James Franklin at Penn State. Do you think this is a sign of Penn State possibly taking that next step in the next few years, or simply cards falling right for Penn State? If you think it's a true change in trajectory, do you see a specific reason for it? I think it's the assistant coaches are great recruiters, and I think we've seen development from players on the field. So there's a more synergistic effect of getting higher quality assistants that can do both. And that's part of James Franklin's negotiations of his contract and the package he gets from Penn State, all of which you talk about stealing thunder is what I learned from you on this show.
No, I just stacking classes is extremely important. And obviously, right, Penn State's class of 2021, it was lower ranked for sure. But probably, I think Ryan Snyder has demonstrated over and over again that it probably wasn't as bad as the perception was of it. But still, like 25-man classes that finish top 12 year after year after year, right? If you could turn 2 into 3, turn 1 into 2, like those play out. Those it's all there, right? Like there's no mystery to this. Yes, you need some things to break right. The transfer portal has become a bigger thing, right? There are individual situations that as a program you need to work out for you at certain positions. But yes, the more good players that you recruit into your program and do it year by year by year by year, the better your chances are at success. And I think that will come to fruition. In the coming years. It's just a matter of what is people's appetite for acknowledging where the program is today, right? In year 9 of James Franklin versus what it could become in 3 years. Because I think if we're being fair, that's the timeline right. Drew Allar and Nick Singleton aren't going to pay dividends for you this year. I mean, Nick Singleton might, but Drew Allar is not. Drew Allar is like you cash out on Drew Allar in year 3. And so maybe year 2, but I'm just saying like those splash recruits that they just brought in and the splash recruits that they're bringing in this next class, that it's going to take some time. There's going to be that process, which is why, I see people roll their eyes at a 10-year deal for James Franklin, but part of recruiting is assuring recruits that you want to be at this place as a head coach and that you are committed to it and you're committed to the process. That has been assured more or less for at least the next 3 or 4 years. And so these classes can come in, they can start to build on each other. And there will be results on the field as a matter of that.
I'm looking it up right now just to make sure I know where it is. You mentioned wanting to be at the university and everything that happened with Jim Harbaugh this offseason. Jim Harbaugh. To the day I die, I will get those guys mixed up the entire time. They're 24th he tried to leave for the Vikings. And, maybe he tried to leave for the Dolphins or whatever the things you can hear from reporting in the NFL was. And, the story is yet to be written. There are players out there. They can get players in this class. But at this point, they've got 12 recruits. They're 24th in the nation. Penn State has 19. Their class is almost wrapped up. They have a 5-star and 13 4-stars. So consistency. And, for everything that everybody said about James Franklin last season about, why won't he just say he wants to be at Penn State? Why won't he said every single time, like, I think I've proven I want to be here. And then once the deal was done and the deal is in place, they continue on with what they did in the class of 22. And then you've got another guy who's like, I bleed blue. I am Michigan. Yeah. I am the epitome of the mitt. And then he dabbles with going to the NFL, and they lose Josh Gaddis. So a lot of things happen, a lot of change this offseason for Michigan, and that change didn't help them on the recruiting trail. Valhalla Valley asks,
better you saying it than me. I love it.
I like that name, Valhalla Valley. I like that one. Which player on both sides of the ball, quarterback excluded, would have the biggest negative impact on the rest of the Penn State season if they were lost due to injury? So not quarterback. Who can't Penn State lose? Interesting question, right? A couple names pop to mind, right? Of just go down the list of the best players. Joey Porter Jr., drawn a blank. This is embarrassing. Curtis Jacobs, those two names come to mind. Adisa Isaac, if he gets injured again, like, is that a name you can't lose? So just on the defensive side of the ball, those are three potential names. Are any of those, do you think are can't loses?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would say about the secondary in general, because I would add Jair Brown to that, is just that the depth eases those situations a little bit. I mean, I'll be totally honest. I think that no one in the starting offensive line, projected starting offensive line, can get hurt. If Penn State's offensive line is going to take that step this season, they cannot lose Juice Scruggs, right? Like they can't. You cannot lose your center, given everything that you've been through trying to solidify this. Olu Fashanu, you can't go down. Right. So I just when I'm looking at the offense, I see receivers, not that Parker Washington or Mitchell Tinsley could easily be replaced, but the depth of talent there is better than it has been. Tight ends, depth of talent, the floor is so much higher at those positions. Sean Clifford, if he goes down, Christian Veger can play, right? We've established that. Can he play as well as? I mean, that's to be determined. We can't know right now. Running back. Yeah, you can lose a running back. You can't lose your offensive line. They have probably lifted the floor for the guards, right? For the interior of the offensive line. I think it's better than it had been. But even then, you're really looking at 6 guys, right? Like left to right. You've got 2 tackles, bookends that are going to play. They are starters, no doubt about it.
Yep.
You got the center. He's the starter. You more or less know Landon Tengwall is going to be the left guard. Okay. Yep. Which means, and then Sal Wormley and Hunter Norzad battling it out for right guard, realistically means that they each could play that and could swap over to the left side if needed. But that still means you can't afford an injury there. So I'm done.
So who's good? Here's the other question on the interior, because here's the picture I've painted this offseason is JB Nelson went from 330 pounds at Lackawanna to 295 on the roster. So he has been doing some major work over the last year and a half to where he is as a lineman. I think he needs to build up a little bit at this point. He needs to put some muscle back on. So is he ready to play at 300 pounds? Let's just say he's going to be 300 pounds. Is he ready to play?
Yep.
I'm having a hard time with names today. What am I doing?
Israel Achumba is he's in that rotation. James Franklin actually mentioned him at that summer availability.
I'd have to see a snap from him. I'd have to see
that's what I'm saying.
Snap.
he's been hurt. I talked to Phil
Yeah.
Trautwein about him, and Phil was saying, look, the Golden wants to start this year. Is that a reasonable path to believe is out there for him? Probably not. He's looking at a backup role, but for the first time in his career, if he's not hurt, he should have an opportunity to get some reps. And so that's part of that process of, being established and creating a foundation to grow from. But there's not experience back there in terms of the depth that Penn State has on the offensive line.
There are, I guess, this year, from what I've seen of these players on film, there are more options on the interior that I think have legitimate talent. And, where Sal Wormley is on that road to recovery, I think the time of the injury, he'll be a year during training camp. That's better than it is if it's during the season. And then Vega Ioane is the last guy who has really good potential. Like, wow. Like, I can't tell you how excited I am to watch him play football someday, because I want to see if he's as good as, and when is that timeline? So if some of these things on the interior break the right way for Penn State at some point, then if you lose the tackle, you go, we've seen Landon Sengwall play tackle. He has played every position but center. And this summer, when I made that joke, he's like, yeah, but I've been snapping this summer. So, I'm getting used to it. It's like, really? Yeah, okay.
This guy.
So you're gonna play every position. He's gonna be good at every position by the time he leaves, so he can back up any of these positions. That gives you a level of comfort, but it is not ideal. You're right. I think the offensive line, that is the one place you can't lose any of your starters, especially those tackles. Let's go on to the next question. Losie's mustache asks something about lifting. Interesting here, the comparison he makes. Video of Nick Singleton cleaning 265 pounds. Everyone is comparing him and the specific video to Barkley doing his 405 clean, which I thought wasn't his freshman year. I thought that was later in his career, but he says it's his freshman year. I know the expectations are through the roof for Singleton's season, but are we going too far, Nate?
I would say no, in the sense that it's just about what are you saying, right? So acknowledging Nick Singleton's athleticism as being elite is not hype. It's true. He is an unbelievable athlete. He has been trained for this. He is a freak. He is rarefied air, fits the bill, should be on Bruce Feldman's freaks list this year. I'm just saying the truth, right? Like he is that. Can he play football? Can he play and when I say can he play football, I mean that in the broadest sense possible. Yeah. Right? Not just beating other high school defenses around an edge and running for 80 yards. We know that he can do that, right? We know that he can do that. Can he do it in college? I think so. I think that his teammates, forget me. Who cares what I think? Doesn't matter. What you think matters a little bit more. But when Jair Brown says something and says, he's got that woo-woo speed, that, it's different. That means something. That is we just take our cues from what the people who see it every day think. And there has been nothing about Nick Singleton's presence on Penn State's campus since he got to Penn State in January that has suggested that he's not truly something of a unicorn in terms of his talent. It's just about translating it to the field on a down by down, do it under the lights.
Right. What does he have to do? So let's take it in two parts. Let's take it if Nick Singleton, the individual, and the expectation for the individual, and Nick Singleton, the running back in the ecosystem of Penn State's offense, and what his role at a bare minimum needs to be, which is that woo-woo speed. He needs to bring that to the table as a real threat to alleviate some of the pressure on the offensive line and the passing game, both in their run blocking and just getting them in better situations, taking some of everything we've said all offseason. All he has to do, if he can every other game rip off a 30-yard run, be a consistent
No
presence
doubt.
and a consistent threat. Is that enough for the hype? I don't know that question. But then that becomes about what Losi's mustache is asking here is he has to learn the playbook. He has to integrate into the, his take on the maturity of all of the things. But as you've pointed out, and I think you know him and his family and his situation a little better than most people, seems like a kid that was made for this, like a very mature individual. It's not like he's been sitting around all summer not learning the playbook. I imagine he's been putting in the effort as an athlete and as, a football student to be up to that point. I'm expecting him to provide that part to make good on all of this stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that all of that is fair. My counter would be that, and whether this was read between the lines, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I expect Sean Clifford to take a sack that he might not have otherwise because Nick Singleton is in the game this season, right? Like,
right.
Pass protection, blocking, those things are not what fans necessarily pay attention to or are focusing on in terms of what they're talking about, right? Like Nick Singleton is sexy because he's going to run, he's going to hit home runs, right? Like that's what he does. But it is those other elements of the game that you got to give him some room.
Like, but it tells you something.
You can't have those same expectations.
It tells you something, Nate, that what you just said is he might take a sack because Singleton's in the game and Singleton's still in the game. As much as we know that coaches want to trust their running back and they want to be able to give the best possible opportunity to the quarterback and protection, and you got to earn to be on the field. If you're ripping off 40-yard runs, pass protection is a secondary role. You got to tote the rock. So, and I think that the way we're talking is kind of answered this question here. How do you see running back carries play out during September, presuming everyone stays healthy? It will not be dominated by one player early, but we'll see. Like, it's TBD after the first 2 or 3 games.
Change that to October, and then let's talk.
Got a couple minutes here left. Want to get through these last questions here. If the O-line is bad or even worse this season, and I'm just going to say if they're bad, I will not accept worse. Would Troutwine be done? I'm assuming he means fired at Penn State, or the O-line commits coming in 23 class enough to keep him around. I don't think it can be as bad as last year. Okay, glad we got to the end of this journey here together. But I've said that before. Thanks. I hate, so it's not like we are coworkers, like I don't go into the office and like Phil Troutwine's not in the next room, but we work and we talk to these people, and like it always gets uncomfortable talking about, should you fire this guy? That being said, there are expectations about the job they're doing. And I think it's open for conversation if the offensive line continues to struggle, especially guys that have been here for a couple of years now. If certain guys don't get better, I do think we have to have that conversation, but it is not to the point that fans have it already, where they wanted to fire him last year. I think the evaluation period intensifies this season.
I don't. One, I don't like that the only resort to improve a situation is firing. I hate that we've reduced our conversations to that in terms of football. However, to have that conversation on top of a dismal projection, right? Like you're
assuming the negative in
correct. Like not just the negative, the worst, right? Like the worst outcome that they make no improvement over a bad season. And I mean, let's be honest, the floor is relatively low on this. The bar is low to have to clear it to make improvements. So, I think that James Franklin has demonstrated that he has a faith in Phil Troutwine. He believed in him when he brought him in. Obviously, that was a move that James Franklin wanted to make because the guy before it's not like it was bad, right? It's
Yeah.
not like it
Yeah.
was it may have been inconsistent, but it wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
Phil Troutwine was brought in to improve the situation. It just so happens that when Phil Troutwine arrived to Penn State, it was the worst moment in human history that an offensive line coach could possibly arrive at a
Yeah.
place that didn't allow him to touch his players for the first 6 months that he was on campus. Like it was such an unideal isn't a word, I don't think. But that's what I'm trying to convey. It was so bad of a situation. They've moved past that. There are some players on the offensive line that have some experience with him. He's not reteaching them from the ground up. It's not a rebuilding process. It's building on top of a foundation that has already been laid by him, and they can get better.
Yep. Yeah. And part of it is those, and I've said this, I'll say it again. The guys on the left side of the line have to grow up pretty quickly. They have to, if Penn State wants to be good and they want to be a good major step forward, definitive line in the sand improvement, everyone has to play to an acceptable level. And that means you don't have time for youthful mistakes. So that to me is a important thing. New member here, the Renegade, not just any Renegade, the Renegade is joining us. And he signed up for $1 at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Yeah, no, but he's got 2 E's, so it's not copyright infringement. So it's very cagey on his part. He signed up bluewhiteillustrated.com for just $1. Get 12 months of access for $1, and you get inside the Lions Den to ask questions. Glad I just signed up. We're happy to have you, the Renegade. Nick Saban spoke in a recent interview about fairness in college football and in the NFL. The NFL has aspects of control, parity, salary caps, the draft, number of games played, rosters, all those things. Aside from controlling out-of-conference games, which Saban brought up, what other ways could there be balance in college football? Recruiting limitations based on rank, athletic budgeting. We got to balance the force here. How are we bringing balance to the force? And please don't tell me that we have to throw a guy shooting lightning out of his hands over an elevator.
I'm going straight to it because I think that this is the future. It is certainly a big part of the present, but it's going to be even bigger. Is a cap on NIL distribution. Okay. So what I'm saying is you can bring in whoever you want, right? That's not a problem. Players can make as much as they want. They have legally that right to do it. However, some kind of construct on your NIL collective cannot distribute more than this amount of money per year on the whole. And so it doesn't inhibit you from having splash endorsement deals or whatever, right? Like whatever your stars get. But I just think it says like, okay, this notion that you can go to that one place in particular is going to get all of the best players because there is no limit to what their pockets as a donor base, whatever, can give. Yeah. Like I think that is something that could be established by the NCAA. It's just it's probably not realistic because they're going to get sued. So
yeah, all of this is problematic because the NCAA, the thing that they don't have is they don't have an antitrust exemption. Yep. So when you don't have that, you can't operate like any other professional league because the minute you try to limit somebody else's earnings, it's collusion. You're a monopoly. That's not legal. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm just kind of repeating things I've learned. So it's very problematic of how you fix this because it would be you set up a high school draft like in Major League Baseball. But can you do that? Do you get all of the teams to agree? Can you get a salary cap? Do you have a union? Do you do revenue sharing with the athletes? All of these things that are common at the next level, can you do them if you don't have some of these constitutional and judicial exemptions? Because otherwise, like, I don't know how this works.
I mean, look, and this goes back to the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of they're still going to class. You choose your university also, right? Like, so you're choosing your program, yes, but
Right.
what if you get drafted to a college football program that doesn't have an engineering department and you want to
Yeah.
be in engineering or whatever, PR, like you name it. I mean,
Yeah.
it just taking away that free will of the players, you can't, it's impossible. You can't have that
Here's
based
me
on the
going, I
marriage
don't
that
know.
currently exists. Yeah.
Yeah. Tin Man asks, which freshman do you get which freshman do you feel get the green light this season to play more than 4 games? I actually did 2 articles about this over at the website, bluewhiteillustrated.com, where I predicted all of the freshmen. I had 4 players that I thought were green lights. So, Nate, I'm going to just let you answer that because if you want to get my answers on that, go check out the articles. Nate, what do you think here?
You had 4 for offense and defense, both?
No, I had 4 total. I had 4
Okay.
players total that I think right now are hard green lights and a couple yellows that I could see leaning to be green lights eventually once we get more information.
Okay. I'm going to guess what you had. I didn't see it. I'm sorry. Nick Singleton.
Well, neither did Tin Man. Yep.
Denied Dennis Sutton.
Correct.
Kaytron Allen.
Nailed it. One more.
Oh, man.
It's not hard. You know it. You know it.
Do I know it?
Yeah.
Am I
the only other obvious freshman?
Something?
You are forgetting someone. Yes.
Who am I forgetting?
The unstoppable train.
Myself. Oh, Zane. Oh, I'm so stupid. That was dumb. Yeah.
No, you
Zane
got
Durant.
it.
Yeah.
You got it. I didn't tell you. So yeah,
you said the train.
Players,
I knew.
The hype train has left the station for Zane Durant, and I'm pulling off the brakes. We are about to jump out and let it go over the cliff for Nick Singleton. Like we're almost just fully off the tracks for Nick Singleton too. So yeah, those are the 4 players I think, and I those are the obvious ones. Do you have any other guys, maybe non-obvious, that you put on that list?
Abdul Carter.
That's not bad.
But
we'll see.
But yellow, like, you know what I mean? That some of these guys, I think they would like to redshirt them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that they would have liked to redshirt Jalen Reed last year. But sometimes the situation forces it and you make the best of it, right? Like there's no COVID exemption for classes from last year on. And so like you get your 4 years now. There's no do-over. So yeah.
Cy Kim asks a question here. Considering that, putting it nicely, the NIL program and the record of the last 2 years have not been top 10, would you say the coaching and recruiting staff have done well with this recruiting class, especially after getting 2 commits for the top 2 linebacker targets last week in the self-fashioned TNT, Tony Rojas and Tamia Robinson? Your Honor, Cy Kim is leading the witness. Would you say they've done quite well? Yes, I would. Yes, I would say they have done very well. Nate, this is an area where I know we're trying to learn more, and you're doing more digging on the NIL situation at Penn State. Mm-hmm. Do we know how to gauge what they have to work with?
So I just think that there's a couple of different things going on, right? One is the collective and the health of the collective. Mm-hmm. You had Jason Belzer on the show. This was public. There's no mystery to it that they would like it to be better, right? Yeah. Everyone, Penn State proper would like it to be better. Success with Honor would like it to be better. And so those are things that their optimism is built on. Hey, they haven't had commercials in the football stadium yet. There has been nothing to really kind of solidify. They launched in February. So there hasn't been that moment to galvanize support. So we're going to make an assumption that will get better getting into the football season. But the second thing that I think is happening is, kind of some of these individual deals. There actually is a camp being put on with 7 or 8 Penn State football players, a free camp presented by Lehigh Valley Health Network, I believe. Sean Clifford's going to be there. I believe Jair Brown, maybe Parker Washington. There's a bunch of guys, current Penn State student athletes that are going to be putting on this kids camp this weekend. That's a step. That's a step in a positive direction. Nick Singleton's deal with Camp Hill,
the home company.
The home company. Yes.
Yeah.
My apologies.
They're not advertising with us, so I don't feel like we have to get it exactly right. But yeah, he's got.
Right. Right. So those things I think are also positive steps for Penn State. It's just a matter of getting it all. Look, if this existed in a vacuum and all you had to judge was, hey, Penn State's kind of getting these things off the ground. This is a new foray that originated on July 1, 2021. And you just looked at it and you said, okay, well, hey, like, here's evidence of deals getting done. All good. You would look at it and you would say, oh, this is progress. They're getting better. They're taking steps. It's that it's not happening in a vacuum. This is a competition. And so the competition is with 130, realistically, 15 other universities and their fan bases who are much more experienced at this.
Well done.
Thank you. Yeah. Much more experience at this and have those operations kind of up and running. And so Penn State has to catch up to that or they're going to get left behind.
Speaking of sponsorships, something I should have done earlier in the show, and I apologize to PSU Tixman Jim. Have you been looking for a reliable source of Penn State football tickets? Jim at TixmanJim.com, formerly PSUTixman.com, has been running his ticket exchange in Wilmington, Delaware for over 25 years. Every buyer is handled with courtesy, respect, and every ticket purchase is guaranteed. Proceeds are used to fund the PSU AA Chapter Scholarship Fund and the PSU Levi Lamb Fund for athletic scholarships. Go to the home opener at Ohio U, the Ohio State Stripeout, or the Minnesota Homecoming Whiteout. Get your tickets now. Go to www.tixmanjim.com. You see that here on the screen, or email Jim at tixmanjim@gmail.com. Call 302-521-8380. That's 302-521-8380, or as you see here on the screen, tixmanjim.com. We got one more question I want to get to here on the show. And by the way, we're like an hour in. We're going to talk about him tomorrow on the daily tomorrow as well. I feel bad about that. Honest J Paterno says, tell me why or why not Sean Clifford is capable of being Stetson Bennett. Because the point of Stetson Bennett is not Stetson Bennett. It's the Georgia offense and defense. It's that Stetson Bennett was a passenger on that vehicle. I don't think people realize.
Almost derailed the train at the beginning of that game. Do we not remember this?
I don't think people realize, because he almost never played, how freaky George Pickens is, the receiver. Oh my gosh. I loved watching the 5 plays that he had at Georgia. Holy cow. Former 5-star receiver. He can catch things that are outside his orbit. And he can run, he can cut, he can jump. He's Gumby, but he's fast and strong. As long as he can stay on the football field, that dude is electric. And the defense, one of the best we've ever seen. So does Penn State have that? Does Penn State have that? Then sure, Sean Clifford can be way better than Stetson Bennett. But
yeah,
I don't think that they're Georgia 2021.
Concur. Can Sean Clifford be a person who is perceived as not being an elite quarterback that can lead Penn State to win a lot of games this year? Absolutely. Yes. Lead Penn State to wins, but as part of a collection of it's a team game. And just, I'm going to pound that drum over and over and over. It takes 11 on each side. And if you're missing some spots or have some serious deficiencies, it impacts all of the others. Usually.
Any other thoughts before we get out of here?
No. This was great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Yeah, this was fun. How about this? We'll do it again next week. Thursday.
Okay. All right. I'm in.
All right. TBD on what we're doing tomorrow because Ryan Snyder is in the middle of moving his entire existence. So we'll find out what we're doing tomorrow, but we're going to have a BWI Daily Edition for sure. So tune in 3 p.m. on YouTube. We're airing the show at 3 p.m. You can check out a live airing at 3. And of course, if you're listening to the podcast, you can get it wherever you download your podcast. Thank you so much, Nate. I started saying this on the channel. I think it was like a week or two ago, how many podcast listeners we have. It started at nearly 8,000, and we're almost up to 9 now, like 1,000 people in a week. And that's just like in the last week. So thank you to everybody who watched the show. Thanks for sharing with your friends. Thanks for liking, subscribing, doing all the extra stuff. If you're here on YouTube and you like the video, thank you so much. We super appreciate the support, and you're going to get our absolute best. It's all the things to the wall come football season. All the coverage, all the time from Blue White Illustrated. It's going to be a great season. I'm super excited for it. And it all starts, well, it never stopped. So we'll just keep going tomorrow with the BWI Daily. Talk to you then.